Hello and welcome to It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Joining me today is Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Happy to be with you.
Okay, let's start talk a little bit about the recent rent assistance that the federal government announced. Maybe if you could explain from your perspective, your organization's perspective, why it's a good thing and how impactful it will be for small businesses across the country.
Well, it was a huge announcement from Chrystia Freeland, our Minister of Finance, just last week. Really encouraged that the minister has moved on many of the design parameters that we laid out. Look, the previous support that was there for rent, the SECRA program, was just not working. It was only available to firms that had a 70% revenue loss. It was only available to firms that also had their landlord to agree to it, and of course, very few of the landlords did. So most firms were getting zero, and yet desperately needed some support. Typically, rent is the second largest expense for most small independent businesses.
Yeah.
The new approach, we asked Minister Freeland, I talked to her about this myself, to do three big things. First, take away the landlord participation altogether. Don't require landlords to play ball in order to get the subsidy to the tenant. Second, to make sure that firms of any degree of business loss would receive at least some subsidy. Do a sliding scale approach rather than an all or nothing approach, and that was part of it. And third, we asked that the support be extended over the rest of the fall and into the winter, and we're really pleased to report that the subsidy now will be there until mid-June, and at a fairly high rate for the next 3 months, for October, November, and December. That's absolutely critical. It will help, we believe, thousands and thousands of small firms in what could be a very rocky fall. Remember, we're going into the Christmas holiday season. For retailers in particular, and many in the service sector, this is the make it or break it season. If you don't have a good couple of months leading up to Christmas, your business is toast. Some tell me that it's 50% of their total sales the next couple of months. So if, and with people staying at home, not going to independents or rushing to Amazon for their Christmas presents, we can imagine it's going to be pretty lean for a lot of businesses as we go forward.
Yeah. You know, I know it's hard to speculate, but I'm going to throw this question out at you anyway. The program that was announced just the other day, if that had been announced, say, in April, what impact do you think it would have had for numerous businesses out there?
Oh gosh, while I'm really happy that the government has finally moved on this, I'm deeply unhappy that it took them so long. There will be tens of thousands of business bankruptcies as a result of the ineffective rent support approach that we've had right through the pandemic, right back to the emergency phase in March and April. In fact, we're not done yet. We're still lobbying the government for the one big thing they didn't do on rent, and that is announced retroactive support for those that qualified for SECRA but didn't get it because their landlord didn't participate. Those rent bills have not gone away. I mean, right now I've got loads of members that are telling me they're struggling to outrun their debt. The rent bills are due. Their revenues maybe are covering current expenses, but what are they going to do to pay the 50, 100 grand in back rent that they've had over the last number of months? So we're asking government, okay, maybe because the landlords didn't participate, you can't give them a 75% subsidy as originally planned, but at least give them the 50% that was intended to come from government itself. That we believe would be a fair approach, and so we're still lobbying Chrystia Freeland and the federal government on that very front.
Oh, interesting. What else are you lobbying the federal government on? What else would you like to see the government put in place?
Well, the other big one is some fixes to the CFIB bank account, the CFIB loan program. On the positive side, again, in Friday's announcement, the government did announce and agreed to an expansion of the CFIB program, which we're very happy about. They raised the maximum loan from $40,000 to $60,000. They also threw in another $10,000 of that loan that would be forgivable. So that was really good news. We're encouraged by that. but they still haven't fixed access to the program, and there are thousands and thousands of firms slipping through the cracks. On May 19th, the Prime Minister promised to allow those without business bank accounts to gain access to CEBA. Hasn't happened yet. Those that don't have a payroll but actually pay a bunch of expenses, they've added all sorts of hoops that you have to go through to be able to qualify for that program, and many are again slipping through that. I've spoken to hundreds of them across the country. So they need to fix that as much as they need to expand the CEBA program, and so that remains high on our agenda.
Yeah.
And of course, the wage subsidy, they announced some changes to that, also very positive. They're extending that now at higher amounts over the next number of months and then into June of next year. But still, you know what's missing is some support for the business owner, him or herself, with their wages. Many of these businesses have just not been able to draw any money out of their company, and the family behind the business needs to eat too.
Yeah.
So we're asking that the wage subsidy allow those that pay themselves with dividends to have at least a modicum of income for the business owner, for his or her family.
Yeah. Well, lately on the news, you hear it every night now here for the last few days, you're seeing numbers growing in COVID, Quebec, Ontario, Alberta, the Maritimes now as well. Does it worry you, and the organization, that the impact this is going to have in the coming weeks on businesses and potentially, further lockdowns of sorts?
We are deeply concerned about what's going on right now with COVID numbers ticking up in some provinces, or at least the total number of cases. We are seeing governments take action. So in Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, there have been further crackdowns, further closures of businesses, either full closures or partial closures, including dining room dining in most restaurants, prohibited in large swaths of Ontario and Quebec. That's going to have a devastating impact of these firms. They were still digging their way out of COVID wave 1, and now to be shut down fully or partially during COVID wave 2. These firms are just not strong enough in many cases to survive it. So there do need to be better support programs in place. I am encouraged that the federal government did say that there's going to be a top up of the rent support subsidy and even more money, an extra 25% for businesses that are shut down a second time.
Yeah.
We don't know the details of that, but provinces have been kind of slow on this front. They need to do better. And if the province is going to mandate that you close down again, they've got to find a way to get more support directly to those affected businesses. But there's a whole bunch of unfairnesses that occurred during COVID wave 1. I think we spoke about the fact that the small retailer was closed, and yet big box stores that had grocery aisles were allowed to stay open. I don't want to see a repeat of any of that. I will be lobbying. If the government decides to close down independent retailers that have 2,000 square feet, I'm going to be lobbying to ensure that Walmart and Costco are restricted to selling groceries only, so that we don't have this unfair playing field that existed during the spring.
Mm-hmm. One last thing, Dan, as we do head into the holiday season and as you said, the critical time for many of these businesses, can you talk to people out there and about the message of buying and shopping locally and how critically important that is?
As we're talking, it's the second day of Amazon Prime Day, and so tons of Canadians are racing to buy what may be a good deal on Amazon to do their Christmas shopping in a physically distanced manner. I don't blame Canadians for using some of these online tools, but I remind them that if we want to see some independent retailers in your backyard, you got to support them.
Yeah.
And simply shifting all of your spending to the big box stores or the big online giants means that more small independent businesses will close. We are already predicting, you and I have spoken about this before, Mario, that 1 in 7 businesses is in high risk of bankruptcy or winding down. That could be 160,000 independent businesses permanently closed as a result of the first round of COVID-19 effects.
Yeah.
That number could go higher if wave 2 really takes hold. So we're asking Canadians to check out our campaign, smallbusinesseveryday.ca. You can take a pledge to dedicate not all, but some of your dollars to support local independent businesses in your neighborhood. That would make a huge difference in helping these businesses survive and continuing to provide all the benefits in terms of jobs and tax revenues, contributions to local community groups that small businesses do really, really well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks very much for joining us again, Dan.
Anytime.
Okay, that was Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. This has been It's Your Business with Mario Toneguzzi on Megapix Media. Thanks for joining us today.